what you described there, and I'm anxious now for the next book. We talk about authentic care from folks that are in leadership positions, and that's hard to teach, I think. But the coach and learner and teacher emphasis, I think you probably saw people you might not have guessed would make a transition into that role, did so. And
Yeah,
and were there some that took a little extra teaching?
and some that decided they would be happy somewhere else. But then also, too, I think we have a tendency to camouflage issues with confusion to make out how smart we are. So let's talk about coaching for a moment. When we said everyone's going to be a coach, we changed the titles of people in the organization. We didn't have managers anymore. We call them coaches. But then we said, what? And then the folks in the organization said, so what does that mean? So we're able to describe it, right? A great coach is committed to helping the player get an A, and they know the game. A great coach is brave, not protecting their own comfort zone at the expense of someone else's growth. So they're okay about giving redirection. They never, ever, ever run on the field and take the ball. If you think about micromanagement, it's people running on the field, taking the ball. They spend their time on the sideline watching the play, so they're engaged in the business. They add value to the player with feedback on how to improve the play. They never, ever, ever, ever go to the podium and pick up the prize. And we'll think about the leaders who take the praise away from people so they don't feel like they matter anymore. And Chris and Mark, they spend a lot of time in the stinky locker room building trust. They're
Yeah.
not that corporate royalty CEO who never goes to the cafeteria or canteen to have coffee because someone's delivering it to their desk if they can get through the locked door in the big corner office.
And I think one of the things that Mark and I talk about a lot with any organization that comes to us and is interested in a culture refinement is the idea of accountability. And we just had a couple of sessions yesterday. We've got two more with a current client on, and accountability is one of their values. And the conversations we had about, so, kind of what pain points do you guys all have? And these were frontline plant players, not managers or soups. Talk about language driving interesting assumptions, right? Smart people. And their frustration was accountability because they would have teams they're working with or they hand off at the end of their shift, and frustration about, well, why didn't you tell me that was broken? How come I had to wait 2 hours before the darn thing blew up, right? And so the idea of accountability cross organizational typical boundaries.
Well, yeah, and there's two things that we used, two tools we used around that. Firstly, of course, the book I wrote with Ken, which is helping people win at work. And the byline is, don't mark my paper, help me get an A. So the first question is, do people in your organization know what an A looks like? And accountability is pretty simple. Do they know what they're supposed to do, when they're supposed to do it, and to the standard they're supposed to do it to? And most organizations don't go to the depth of doing that. But secondly, there's this other disease that runs through an organization. It's called the na disease, the finger pointing disease, right? And it's what you just shared. So we said we are going to have a pledge within the organization that puts the responsibility of knowing and telling on the feet of everybody. So we created this thing and we called it the Maniac Pledge. And here it is. I am responsible for taking action, asking questions, getting answers, and making decisions. I won't wait for someone to tell me. If I need to know, I am responsible for asking. I have no right to be offended that I didn't get this sooner. And if I'm doing something others should know about, I am responsible for telling them. And that was the pledge we took in the organization from top to bottom to take away the na-na-ni-na-na disease, the finger-pointing disease, because we said the responsibility, and listen to the first three words, I am responsible. So everybody was responsible. So, someone swapping the shifts couldn't say to the person coming in, well, you didn't tell me. We took the pledge. You should have. So let's have a conversation about why that's not happening.
Well, you just defined accountability. And that, Chris and I, as we continue our practice, especially since we talk so much about accountability in our last book, Good Comes First, almost every client comes up to us now and says, that's our number one thing. And we didn't even think about it. We hadn't even thought about this until you guys wrote an entire paragraph on it. There's no doubt in anybody's mind that's where we're failing. And we had a certain set of values even before we read the book, but we didn't hold anybody accountable for living them, modeling them, coaching them. And if we happen to be talking to a CHRO or the director of human resources, many times it's volunteered that the CEO himself doesn't model those values.